back to the Everything College Football podcast. Dave, me and Nick here. We're doing 2022 SEC predictions extensively about our top 3 picks in each division, and then to cap things off with teams as a whole. Kicking things off, Nick, Alabama Crimson Tide. 12-0 is the unanimous verdict here from me and you, because you look at the offense. We'll start with this unit, because Bryce Young, Heisman winner last year. They add Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a dual threat back, very explosive, shifty guy from Georgia Tech, 5'11", 200. The traits are impressive. Henry Teoto, I seen a quote today where it said he's never seen a back like this. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to do special things in this offense. Bill O'Brien, can't wait to see the creativity. Bryce Young, so good, got better every single week, showed great command, great poise on his way to a record-setting season for Alabama. The biggest concern, offensive line. They were outside the top 120 in sacks and tackles for loss allowed last year. They had 11 allowed versus Auburn to beat Georgia in the SEC title games because the offensive line was going to be much better, and they were. They get back both guards, Javian Cohen, Emil Ekiyor, J.C. Latham, Tommy Brockmeyer. Interested to see how those guys fit in. Light comes over from Vanderbilt. The offensive line struggles. It held this running game up. Robinson still had his 1,300 yards. There were games where he was ineffective, 6 yards against LSU, for example. I want you to focus on this offensive line because it's the one part I'm really focusing on this offense.
Right, I've been an Alabama fan for as long as I can remember, and I cannot remember in my entire lifetime seeing an offensive line as bad as I saw last season. It was so poor from top to bottom. The running game was just not able to get anything started as the offensive line really struggled to get blocks in there. It looked like an absolute mess out there at all times. Bryce Young seemed to be running for his life at times. That LSU game especially, I was there in Bryant-Denny. I just couldn't believe how tough the offensive line looked. It was just so bad. It was a terrible look for Nick Saban, and he's clearly addressed it by hiring a coach from Kentucky who he really trusts to revamp this offensive line. I think Tyler Steen is one of the most impactful college football transfers this year out of the portal. He's not going to be a guy, you're not going to see the stats about it. You're going to see the wide receivers put up crazy stats of the transfer portal, but Tyler Steen's going to have a really huge impact on this offensive line. I think he's the key piece that Alabama needed. Nick Saban went out and addressed all the problems he had in the portal. Nick Saban has really grown to love the portal. He picked up Tyler Steen for Vanderbilt. When you watch the film at Vanderbilt, he stands out. I mean, he's clearly the best player on that Vanderbilt offense, top to bottom. You can see it with ease when you watch the film. I think he's an easy fit here for Alabama. Fits in like a glove. It'll be a great sort of thing to have on this left side that was really weak last year.
Tyler Steen, also the heart more times. Gibbs is matched up with Jace McClellan, he's also a dual threat guy who didn't play much last year because he was beat up. And then Trey Sanders, he finally got healthy, played a good bit last year. He's pretty big and physical. So I like this backfield top to bottom, pretty deep. No question marks there. Wide receiver group is another interesting group, kind of like the O-line. Not as many concerns, but another group where last year it wasn't exactly great outside of Mechie and Jamison Williams. This was a wide receiver group that really struggled. You've seen that in the Natty when both of those guys went down. Really struggled to make plays. Jai Hall, of course, transfers out to Texas. Still see him week 2. Ja'Cory Brooks, though, this is a guy everyone's counting on to step up. He didn't do it in that national title game, but I do think over the course of 12-plus games this year, he will certainly emerge as a number 3. Jermaine Burton comes over to provide vertical speed. Guys like Shaz Preston, Kobe Pratis, JoJo Earl, those are some of the names I'm kind of circling here.
Right, I think this is a huge year for JoJo Earl and Ja'Cory Brooks. A lot of people in Tuscaloosa love these two, especially Ja'Cory Brooks. I see his name thrown a lot as the future wide receiver for Alabama. People were talking about him last year. Yes, he struggled a little bit in the national title game, but he had a great game against Auburn, considering the offense looked poor that day on the Plains. I think JoJo Earl is a really underrated player. I think he has some serious potential to break out this year. And then Tyler Harrell is a great pickup, a really late addition to the portal. Alabama had already kind of wrapped up their portal work for the offseason. Then they grab Harrell from Louisville, who I think I love the film on him. It's very limited, but the film that is there is fantastic. His speed is ridiculous. That number you quoted is just an absolute ridiculous number if it is indeed true. I also think some of the guys, some of the freshmen as well, Shaz Preston, he's the guy I'm really highlighting. I think he has potential to step up early, be involved in that game against Utah State week 1. I like Tyler Harrell's potential as a speedster. I think he's going to blow away defenders. I think this wide receiving core is going to be very strong this year.
That's a lot of speed he's going to bring to the table. That another wrinkle Bill O'Brien's going to have some fun with. I agree. There's plenty of depth, plenty of talent, no concern. We just need guys to step up and make plays, and I think they'll certainly do that this year. Versus the run after the Florida game, we're so bad in that game. Gave up 220-plus yards or something. 2.6 yards per carry, though, was 4th in college football. 86 yards per game allowed. Alabama has not been, since Quinn Williams, very dominant on the interior D-line. That's something I've really noticed. Jaheim, though, 6'5", 370. Tim Smith at nose, he's coming back. BJ Dale, pretty much everyone's back on this D-line. Dale, Byron Young. Depth, not as great defensive end as defensive tackle, so I think they'll be a little more sturdy there. Offensive outside. So looking at the interior, Henry Teoto, he could have went to the NFL. Stepped up as a run stopper last year. He's coming back to the ring. 112 stops for him. I'm glad Jalen Moody stuck around. I think he entered the portal briefly. He made some nice plays in that Arkansas start back in 2020. Finally gets an opportunity. Dre Sanders transferring out gives the middle linebacking group, the depth is a little concerning now. In DeMoy Kennedy, number 3 linebacker recruit 2020, Deontay Lawson, just a limited experience group for them. Before we get to the outside linebacker group, which is phenomenal, I want you to talk about the D-line and the inside linebackers because just the dominance has not been there on the interior for me.
Right, I think a lot of people expect more to DJ Dale and Byron Young, those two in the middle there. I do like both of them. I think they're super talented guys. I do think they have a ton of potential. Byron Young as well, been around the program for a while. DJ Dale also very experienced. I like to see a step up out of those two this year. I think they just kind of lack the production that you would hope to see out of them in the past couple of seasons. I like how they both return, though. The veteran leadership there is ridiculous on the defensive line. I think it's a really solid thing to have, like how these guys have played together. When you look at the stats on these guys, DJ only had 18 total tackles last year. And just not a good enough. And Byron Young only had 7 tackles in 15 games. Just not enough production from these guys. I'd like to see him get after the quarterback a little bit more and put some pressure on it. But when you have Will Anderson flanking at linebacker, I guess it's not that big of a deal.
Well, if you remember Quentin Williams, his numbers that year were absurd in every single way. He was just so dominant. And just since then, at least, I mean, I could be wrong, but since then, it just doesn't seem like it's been as dominant. And the outside linebacker group that we're talking about, Will Anderson, 30-plus tackles for loss last year, 16, 17 sacks, one of those numbers. Had over, I think, 100 tackles as well. Will Anderson was phenomenal. Even if you didn't see an impact on the stat sheet, like the Texas A&M game or the national championship, if you watch the film, he's making an impact because a lot of people are saying his stats were inflated, this and that, and that's just not true, Nick. This guy was a dominant force. His quick get off is absurd. You think he's off sides, you watch it back, and he is right there as soon as the ball is snapped. Will Anderson is just a force. He had 4+ tackles for loss against Auburn. Really kept him in that game, a day where their offense struggled. He was so great. And then Dallas Turner, I think he had double-figure tackles for loss as well. He was, as a freshman, this was a breakout player for them. I can only wonder what these guys are going to do, in their second year together, because Alabama, they obviously got to the national championship last year and they lost, but they get back 2 Heisman finalists pretty much. Bryce is one of them. Anderson should have been invited, and then you have Dallas Turner, who's obviously going to be a big breakout star. This is going to be who can guard these guys on the edge.
Right, I do want to just say before I touch on Will Anderson and Dallas Turner, I did misread a stat there. Byron Young had 33 tackles last year. Still not enough for him. I like to see a little more production out of him. But Will Anderson and Dallas Turner, I think these two together are absolute dynamite. We know what Will Anderson can do. Texas A&M fans want to say all they want that he didn't have an impact against that game, but if you watch the film, the impact is there. You got to double team this guy at all times, otherwise he gets the quarterback. 17.5 sacks last year, 31 tackles for loss. It's just a ridiculous number from him. Super talented player. Should have been in New York for the Heisman ceremony. He'll be there this year for sure. Then Dallas Turner, a guy, limited experience last year, didn't play a whole lot till the second half of the season, but he had 10 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks. That was a guy I highlighted on my depth chart early in the season last year. A lot of people who know that I was hyping up Dallas Turner. I thought he had serious potential. I love what he could do as linebacker. He came in and absolutely blew away the expectations I had for him, which were pretty high. I think he's going to continue to build off this year. I think double-digit sacks is almost guaranteed for Dallas Turner. I love what these two can do, and I wouldn't want to be a quarterback facing these guys.
Great call there, and you were clearing something up. I'm going to clear something up as well. I picked Alabama last year as the nation's best secondary. I was far off. They got the 3rd most pass TDs in the SEC, 7th in the conference in yards per game allowed. Just we're not as good as I thought they were going to be. Josh Jobe was a big disappointment. They were kind of beat up at corner as well. It just didn't work the way I thought it would. Eli Ricks, though, comes over from LSU, excellent in man, physical press corner like Ricks. PFF has him as the top-ranked corner coming into the season. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Kyrie Jackson, who Jackson was not great in the Natty. Those guys will battle for CB2. And then the safety group's really good. Jordan Battle, one of the top safeties in college football, very physical. DeMarco Helms, a senior. I know you weren't exactly thrilled with his play last year. This is still a talented, experienced group. I expect big things out of this year, especially in slot. This is an interesting group to watch. What are they going to do with Malachi Moore, who Brian Branch took over that job late in the year and, ran away with it? These guys can play safety too, though. So I'm very interested to see what happens with the shuffling here in the back end. Branch, he's more physical with his violent intentions off the edge. 5 tackles for loss. He had 9 pass breakups as well. Not all of those came in the back end. It came with him coming off the edge. He had 2 pass breakups each in the SEC title and the Cotton Bowl. He got better as the season went on. He was certainly a star for them late in the season. What are your thoughts on the secondary, and what do you think they're going to do with Malachi Moore?
Right, I think DeMarco Helms definitely bothered me at some points last year, but he's overall a well-rounded player. I like to see what he can do. Kool-Aid McKinstry as well. Super talented player. I loved his limited experience last year. He definitely showed some bright spots. Malachi Moore is a player that I've had some problems with for last season. He had his freshman season in 2020, came out in the Texas A&M game, looked poor. I was a little concerned about him, but then he completely turned it around, was a dominant figure for this Alabama team on defense. I absolutely love what he could do as a freshman. Then last year, it just wasn't there. He absolutely disappointed me across the board. I really expected more out of him. I didn't really like his play style. It didn't seem like he was fully motivated and focused. I think they'll fit him in at some point this year. I'd like to see him get him involved, certainly early on in the season. He's such a talented player. The raw upside is certainly there. Seems like Nick Saban lost a little trust in him, and when they bring in Eli Ricks, kind of add some tools to this defense as well, and they have returners in Jordan Battle and DeMarco Helms and Kool-Aid McKinstry. It's going to be tough to see where he can fit Malachi Moore in, but I certainly hope he gets some game time this year.
12-0 for me, 12-0 for you. That's going to be our national champion. Alabama, they're stacked top to bottom. Should be a great year. Some fun games as well. At Texas, I think they play at Ole Miss as well. LSU's on the schedule. And then Texas A&M, our runner-up here in the West. 10-2 is the pick for me. The biggest question mark for A&M is who's going to be the quarterback. Cain got hurt early in the second game of the year. Only saw limited action in that one game he started. 3 picks against Kent State. He's a dual-threat guy, though, can make plays with his legs. But insert Max Johnson comes over from LSU. I think this is a great little piece here for Jimbo Fisher to work with. He tends to make some poor decisions, hold the ball too much. He had a play versus UCLA, which was, first game of the year. We just tossed it behind his back. It was a funny play, but at the same time, don't do that. Very decisive with his reads, nice deep ball. Accuracy with pressure in his face is good. This is a very good quarterback for Jimbo to work with. I don't think he's going to pass up this opportunity, especially since Johnson had 27 scores and 6 picks last year.
Yeah, Max Johnson's a really talented quarterback. We saw it in times at LSU last year. I just think that the offensive weapons that he had were not the best for him. I think he is the surefire starter for Texas A&M this year. I think he has a lot of potential. I love the fit there at A&M. I think he's a good fit for that offense. I think he's a talented quarterback who's going to really show it this year with the sort of potential he has. I think this was a great transfer for him, a great spot for him, and he'll fit in really well.
The biggest reason I like this team, not just for this upcoming year, but 2023 to probably win the title themselves, is the running game and the offensive line. Devon, Achane, Heisman sleeper. I couldn't find his odds. If you're a gambling person, you want a long shot, go find him, because this is a good shot that with this team winning games that he can be up there. 910 of his 1,200 yards came last year, along with 9 of his 13 touchdowns. So he certainly stepped up in that number 2 role last year. 7 yards per carry, great speed, 96-yard kickoff return against Bama, a long, elusive run in the Orange Bowl. This guy can really do a lot of things, Nick, especially in crunch time. He did that against UNC, big-time game against Bama. Redshirt freshman L.J. Johnson, Amari Daniels, those guys will battle for the backup spot. I like L.J. Johnson, good fit for the scheme, terrific one-cut exploder, downhill runner, sits at 5'10", 205. O-line last year replaced 4 starters, get 3 of them back this year. It was both guys on the left side, but the guys I got in return are really great that are coming back. Bryce Foster at center, 6'5", 320. Ruben Fathery, 6'8", 320. He's moved the left tackle. These guys were both all SEC freshmen a season ago. Layden, very powerful. Look at the size, Nick. This is absurd. Baji, he's an athletic guy with some nice explosion. I like Trey Zunn, too. He's exactly what they're looking for, I think. A guy with a high motor who can drive guys back in the running game. Absolutely love this offensive line's potential.
Yeah, I think Trey Zunn is a super talented guy at left tackle. Redshirt freshman, got some experience in the past. I think he has some serious potential to step up. I love his size at left tackle. That's a great fit for me. I think this offensive line is definitely going to make some steps forward this year. I like the experience. Some of the experience is lacking, but I do like some of the experience they have in the middle, especially. I absolutely love this dynamite running back core that Texas A&M has this year. Devon Achane is such a talented back. I can't believe he's not showing up people's watch list. Such a talented back, top to bottom. I love the speed he has. I love the way he's able to cut in the backfield. I also think L.J. Johnson's a really solid backup back to have. Not a bad consolation prize year 2 back. I think he should be really exciting to watch this year. I think he'll step up big time for Texas A&M this year.
Biggest problem I have with this football team is a wide receiver group. Aniahs Smith, their best overall playmaker on offense, probably. He just got arrested. We'll see what happens. Jimbo, usually not a guy who disciplines too heavily, but we'll see if there's any consequences there. Chase Lane, I believe he's coming back. Chapman is transferring out. That's a big loss. 6'5", 200-pound guy who's gone. Chase Lane, though, he only had 7 games last year, 400-plus yards in the year prior to that. Evan Stewart, Chris Marshall, 2 5-stars, might be playing right out of the gates here. Big boy SEC ball straight out of high school. Demas, of course, he's gone as well. So they're kind of depleted here. My depth chart, Evan Stewart is a starter, and Chris Marshall is on the second group. Moose Muhammad, Jalen Preston, some veterans they might get in. But I think these 5 stars in Marshall and Stewart are going to have to make an impact. Can they do it, Nick?
Yeah, it's going to have to be relying on these guys, Marshall and Stewart. I do love both of them as recruits. I think they're super talented 5-stars, obviously. They come Texas A&M that had a great year recruiting this year. Stewart's going to have to start the wide receiver X role probably day 1. I think Chris Marshall has potential maybe to take over Chase Lane's role, move him out at some point, throw Marshall at the wide receiver Z role. I think both of them are super talented. I just don't know if they're going to be ready to get into that sort of tough SEC ball early on. It's going to be a tough adjustment for these wide receivers. I just worry about this wide receiving core. I think Texas A&M's going to have to rely on the run heavy this year.
Max Johnson's brother, Jake Johnson, and Donovan Green, 2 high-end tight end recruits, come over as well to join senior Max Wright. Overall, I think it's a very sound offense. It's going to be much like it was in 2020. They're going to lean on the run game. And I'm very interested to see how Johnson blends with this offense. It'll be interesting to see if he can do it because he didn't have that luxury at LSU. So looking at the defense, DJ Durkin inherits a 4-2-5 unit, young up front, which is obviously not a concern. They landed, I think it was half of the top 10 defensive tackle recruits in this incoming class. So they're obviously loaded for the future, no doubt, but they're still young. The wrecking crew they had last year loses 4 starters. These elite guys are going to come in and maybe play. I think McKinley Jackson, 6'2", 325. He was out for the spring. We'll see if he gets in. Shamar Turner, former 5-star. He's going to be the biggest guy I'm circling here. Inside pass rusher. You know, he was one of 3 freshmen last year on defense that made the All-SEC debut team, you know. Khalil Diggs as well, up to 260. Let's see how he carries that weight. Good first step, good raw athlete. These guys landed a lot of recruits, Nick. We'll see if they get involved. I want to focus on the linebacking core as well. Edgar and Cooper is another one of those all-freshman performers, one of the top tacklers down the stretch for this football team, really good in coverage. And Andre White, hard-hitting run stopper. Very young group overall for the front 7. Again, that's a big reason why I think they're going to be phenomenal in 2023. But how do they project in 2022 with a lot of freshmen going to take on some roles here?
I love DJ. He's a great fit in College Station. They needed a new defensive-minded coach there to coordinate the defense. I think Durkin's the best hire they could have got. I like Andre White. I like Cooper as well. Those 2 linebackers both have great experience, heavy hitters. Love to see what they can continue to do. I think they're both solid. Cooper, 58 total tackles last year. White, 57, not too far behind him. Solid linebacking core. And the front 7's not too bad either. And obviously, when you have a plethora of talent like they do in College Station, they recruited so well this past year. They continue to recruit so well. They're bringing in so much talent top to bottom that I really am not worried about this defensive line. It's going to continue to get better over time.
Secondary is set to have a big year. You know, they got a lot of experience. They got some playmaking. Tyreek Chappell, 9 pass breakups, a pick. He was another one of those all-SEC performers, Nick. A lot of young talent here that was stepping up. Antonio Johnson was so good, though, last year as a tackler, a run stopper, overall slot corner. Damani Richardson, he's been around forever, it seems. He was 3rd in tackles. I like Jalen Jones at corner. 17th ranked pass defense from a season ago. Those numbers are kind of skewed based on, you know, quality opponent. You know, guys like Bama, Mississippi State, LSU had no issues against this secondary, which I think they'll have a big year, but they can't find some pass rush because these young guys aren't making plays, and I think they could be in some trouble. They're going to be forced to be the backbone potentially.
I agree. The secondary could definitely be a liability for this team. Damari Richardson, I like what he can do. Senior leadership there. Been around for a while. Great experience with him. I think he's a super solid guy to have there at safety. I think it's a decent. You know, it's not too bad at all, but I think they could find themselves in trouble early on. If they find themselves losing a couple of games, they have to play catch up. The defense might be, you know, out of gas and find themselves in trouble.
Looking at our 3rd place team here in the West, we have a handful of guys here at 7 and 5. I'm going to go with LSU, who I think will beat the other teams below them. Brian Kelly comes over 93 and 39, 12 years at Notre Dame. Exceptional hire here. A lot of people don't think he's a great culture fit, but this guy put a lot of players in the NFL, Nick. And, you know, looking at the recruiting classes, if I'm not mistaken, none of the classes were ever inside the top 10, really. It was, you know, middle of the pack recruiting classes, and he was putting out NFL players all sides of the ball, left and right. Some real impact performers at the next level. Interesting quarterback battle, because we hear a lot of guys talk about Garrett Nussmeier. Walker Howard's a 5-star coming in. Probably not won't factor into the battle much this year, but they got Miles Brennan and Jalen Daniels as well. So you got 4 guys who could play, probably one of the more stacked quarterback rooms in the country. Daniels never really showed his potential. We'll see what he does with Mike Denbrock, who worked with Desmond Ridder the last 4 years. Pretty similar style quarterback here. So you'd think that would give him maybe a leg up because he kind of fits what they're looking for. Miles Brennan, though, touchdowns and 1,100 yards in 3 games in 2020. He hasn't played since then. You know, he broke an arm. I think he had a kidney issue. I don't know what's going to happen here with this quarterback battle, Nick. Before you get into it, though, the running game, TDP had a 1,000-yard season last year, but 114 yards per game on the ground for LSU. That's not going to cut it. John Emery's back from an academic suspension. They pair him with Amani Goodwin, shifty cutback runner, slips through creases, and Noah Cain. He only had 106 carries for 350 yards last year, which is obviously not great stuff, but this is a talented back. Former high-end 5-star, explosive, a powerful guy. He was also beat up a little bit last year, so I think they have a nice rotation here at back. How do you feel about the running game and this quarterback battle? It's really just a toss-up.
Right, I think Emery Jr. is a solid running back. I'd like to see him take over this year and sort of be that leader in the rushing core. I think he's a super solid guy. I do like the potential he has. If I was Brian Kelly's and I was picking my starting quarterback, I would go with Miles Brennan. I think Miles Brennan is certainly the more polished quarterback of the ones on the roster. You know, we saw in flashes with Jaden Daniels at Arizona State. He definitely has the potential to be an all-star quarterback. And, you know, I hear a lot of people talking about Garrett Nussmeier. I've seen his name show up a whole lot in social media postings. You know, people saying that he needs to be the starter. He's the super talented quarterback. And he's third on my depth chart right now. I'm going to start Miles Brennan day one if I'm Brian Kelly. I think that's just a better fit for me personally. Miles Brennan had a great season as Joe Burrow's Eric and Sit, all things considered, what was a pretty down season for LSU in 2020. I like Miles Brennan. The injury health is certainly there. I also like Jaden Daniels. I just think it's got to be one of those two, and for me, I'm going to take Brennan right now.
I'm not sure where to go. You know, they usually say when you got 2 guys or more, you don't have any guys. So this quarterback battle's a headache. We'll see what they do to figure it out. Turning 54 pass yards per game last year, was 5th in the conference. They certainly missed Kayshon Boutte. Not as much as you think. It really allowed some of these other guys to step up. Brian Thomas, 6'5", and can catch contested balls. Concentration in his hands, you know, they wavered at times last year. Malik Neighbors, home run hitting speed. I like him. Jeray Jenkins, consistent pass catcher. And then Jack Beach, 6'2", 207. They might be using him as a tight end this year. Certainly a slot option with great hands. And, of course, the king of the crop here, Kayshon Boutte, plays outside or in the slot. He's deadly in the open field. He's one of the nation's top pass catchers. so plenty of weapons to work with. I want to focus on the O-line real quick, though. Kelly worked magic on this unit at Notre Dame. Jeff Quinn didn't follow him. Does not have a job at the moment. A little bit of everything on the line here. Some vets, some freshmen, some transfers. They struggled mightily in pass protection last year. Miles Frazier comes over from FIU. He's been rotating in at right tackle. Trayvon Shorts, East Tennessee, transfer, probably going to be a guard. Garrett Dellinger, a breakout player for, I think, most people associated with the program. Strong, athletic, young guy. Missed the spring. Key piece of the future for this unit. And then Will Campbell, impressive physical traits. He's in a battle with Frazier, I believe, for one of the tackle spots. I think they got a nice little group here of weapons and an offensive line. I think this offense altogether could really shock some people this fall.
I agree. I think this offense has serious potential. Kayshon Boutte, it's just a ridiculous wide receiver. Superstar potential written all over him. He's the next NFL superstar coming out of LSU. Super talented wide receiver. Love his potential. Slot outside, wherever you want to put him. Doesn't matter. He's going to light up the scoreboard for you. And I think the highlight for sure on the offensive line, Will Campbell at left tackle. Freshman coming in, true freshman. Is he going to be able to get comfortable start in LSU week 1? I think he should start week 1. I love the talent he has at left tackle. I think he's a solid fit there. Miles Frazier as well, right guard coming in as a transfer. I think that's a solid fit as well. This offensive line is definitely have the one to watch the SEC because it's a complete hodgepodge of players who are seniors, freshmen, juniors, transfers, you name it. They have it all on this offensive line. Be interested to see if they can kind of gel together and form that strong bond.
A little more balanced on the defense. Matt House comes over from Kansas City, the coach of these guys. One of the most banged up units in all of college football last year. They had 9 transfers, 6 in the secondary. I don't know what to feel about this unit. I'm really high on them, but at the same time, they could really struggle. But they lose New Farrell in the middle. I love this D-line. I think it's probably one of the nation's best, top 3 at least. In terms of upside, at least. Mason Smith, former 5-star impactful pass rusher, 4 sacks last year. Mainly played outside last year, but he's a hybrid for them. Jacqueline Roy, top 10 returner in his position, according to most people. 6 tackles for loss. He's getting more condition. That's a big focal point this season for him. Motor will get better. He's a chaos creator. And then you add off the edge, Ali Gay, the length, the leverage he showcases as a pass rusher. Love his flexibility and explosion. 6'6", but he has a nice blend of power and speed. Guy is a high upside player. He only played 4 games last year, had 2.5 sacks. B.J. Ojulari, the brother of Aziz. Expected a breakout season from him last year, and that's what we got. Consistency has been an issue, though, for him over the first 2 years. High-end athleticism, 7 sacks last year for him. Makai Wingo, quick, get off, plays hard. Matt House, he was the linebacking coach at Kansas City, but he's got a nice group of linebackers. Micah Backerville, speedy, a sideline-to-sideline, rangy tackler, had 83 stops last year. Mike Jones, you remember the Clemson transfer from 2 years ago, and he's an asset in coverage. New staff is really impressed with him. He should thrive now with Matt House here. Potential breakout star for them. They also picked up a few transfers here to add some depth. Overall, this front 7, man, West Weeks, one of them from Georgia Tech, who was a really good player for them. They also got Harold Perkins, incoming 5-star. Overall, this front 7 is very undervalued, Nick. Why are people sleeping on him?
I can't believe people are. This front 7's ridiculous. Ali Gay, we saw it in the flashes last year in 4 games from him. I think he's going to have a huge season this year. I expect double-digit tackles for loss and double-digit sacks from Ali Gay. Ojulari as well, super talented, 12 tackles for loss, 7 sacks last year. He's going to step up this year and hit double digits in both figures again this year. I love the protection of him. And then Micah's Bakersville, ridiculous numbers from him last year as well. 83 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, plus an interception as well. He's going to step up this year. I think he's going to be a super impactful linebacker. I love the hire of House. I think he's a super strong fit here. Comes over from Kansas City in the NFL where he's a linebacking coach, gets this college role, comes to defensive coordinator. I think it's a great fit. This front 7 is going to absolutely be a wrecking crew this year. I'm really excited to see them play.
You can say the same thing about the secondary. They're a high upside unit as well. They lose Eli Ricks, but they add 6 transfers. Insane work by Brian Kelly and this staff. None bigger than Jared Bernard Converse from Oklahoma State. He had 11 pass breakups last year. Was rock solid on his side of the field. Joe Faucha, highly productive at Arkansas with 74 sacks. Greg Brooks also comes over from Arkansas. Mekhi Gardner, Louisiana Lafayette. 3rd team All Sun Belt at corner last year. 3 of the 4 I just named are from the area. Gardner, he's from Lafayette. They're landing local guys. 7 Banks didn't break out like we expected last year at Ohio State. Didn't play much, but it's another strong upside player. The safety group I'm more excited for, though. 2 quality safeties. Major Burns is one of them. Jay Ward, a versatile guy who can play safety or corner. Maybe a nickel option to replace Cordell Flott, who's a draftee. Safeties seem to be a better suit for his skill set. Strong tackler, he's instinctive. And they also got former 5-star Sage Ryan. This defense top to bottom, Nick. I'm in love with it, and I hope they live up to expectations this year.
I watched Brian Kelly's press conference during SEC Media Days, and he was speaking about the transfer portal and saying how he wants to bring in guys from Louisiana that they may have missed during the initial recruiting process. He wants to bring in guys from other schools in the state or other schools in the area in the SEC who may not be working out there and bring them home, bring them back to Louisiana. He seems to be doing that well. A lot of these guys have strong ties to the Louisiana area. He brings them in on defense. This whole secondary full of transfers. I think Sevon Banks is someone to watch for sure. Didn't quite work out at Ohio State. He has serious potential. He comes back here. I think this is a solid fit for him. I'd like to see him start at corner this year potentially. all these transfers, I think these guys are great. I just get a little concerned about the transfer portal because I think that the continuity is key for me. I like to have defenses that have experience playing together, so I get a little concerned about that. But Brian Kelly has attacked the portal. It's very clear that players want to come play for him. They want to stay home. They want to play in Louisiana. I think that's a great hire and a great sort of thing to see if you just hired a coach. I think he fits in well here, Brian Kelly, top to bottom. I haven't commented on him yet since in this segment. I like this defense. I like this offense. I like Brian Kelly. This is a good LSU team that a lot of people are sleeping on. They should be in for a big year.
I missed that press conference where he said that. Makes a lot of sense. They also got Tyron Lacey. I don't know if I mentioned him from Louisiana Lafayette at wide receiver. So they are stacking guys locally, and that's nice to see. I think it's a nice little philosophy there. A lot of talented players in that area. Looking at the East Division, though, Nick, Georgia Bulldogs. I'm going to go 11-1 if a loss to South Carolina. This team doesn't face an ultra-tough schedule. They start the year against Oregon. Pretty solid football team. Former defensive coordinator Dan Lanning coaches them now. But other than that, this is not a very tough schedule. Not a lot of tough tests for them. Stenson Bennett, he's gotten a lot better at diagnosing defenses. His decision-making, a rock solid fourth quarter when confidence seemed to be at an all-time low there in that game, following a big mistake. And he delivered. Big-time respect earned that night, 2,800-plus yards, 29 touchdowns last year, only 7 picks. I call him an above-average game manager because I think that that's what he is. He's not a pure game manager. He's a little bit more than that because he provides a lot for them. And that fourth quarter showed it. They needed him to step up, and he did. He might need to carry the offense a little more this season. Todd Monken still here. They still kind of lack the same. I think the running game will lack the same explosiveness last year. James Cook now gone. Kenny McIntosh, a good pass catcher. He can make plays on the outside, hits holes in a hurry. Kendall Milton, slightly bigger at 220. More of a mauler of the two. Does a lot of work as an inside runner, strong, physical. And then Branson Robinson, a guy I think is probably going to break out and get some good touches this year. A top 5 running back in his incoming class. Big, thick back at 5'11", 200. Fits the scheme well. Should get a healthy workload. 191 last year on the ground. Only 7th in conference carries. They didn't really run the ball as much as you'd think, but when they needed to, they were the model of consistency on the ground. I think this running game is really good. Look at the receiving core. They don't lose much. Jermaine Burton transfers to rival Alabama. George Pickens gone to be in the NFL. They lack the size of wide receiver. Latin Ototny, Harris Jackson, they're both 6 foot, under 200 pounds. And A.D. Mitchell as well is 6'4", but he's not, very bulky. Variety of skill sets through this receiving core, though. That's why, there's a lot of no-name guys people don't really know, kind of like McCotney. I think he might have been a former walk-on himself. But these guys have a variety of skill sets, Nick. Then you insert a guy like Arian Smith, elite speed, 3 grabs for 102 yards and 2 scores. Well, it's not healthy one bit. Hasn't been during his time at Georgia, but this guy has speed when he's on the field. And Eric Gilbert, 6'5", 248. They're going to move him to wide receiver, it looks like. And then they cap things off with this, offensive skilled positions. Brock Bowers, this guy's ridiculous. Why does he move this good at 6'4", 230, Nick? It's absurd. 58 grabs, 882 yards, 13 touchdowns, led the team in everything. I think Darnell Washington as well. Only 17 receptions in his first 2 years. Only career TD came on a jump ball versus Bama. We need to see more of that. 6'7", 265. I want to see them get this former 5-star prospect involved. Very sound offense. I don't think any of these guys are going to blow you away at wide receiver, but people are really undervaluing this receiving core.
Man, Brock Bowers just blows me away every time he plays on the football field. I just can't fathom a guy being that size, being able to be as agile and nimble as he is. It's ridiculous. He can do it all. 13 touchdowns last year, in addition to a touchdown on the ground, 14 total touchdowns. Brock Bowers, they're going to target him a lot this year. I think he's a great weapon to have. The size is ridiculous. You can't tackle the kid. He can outplay you. He can do whatever you want to do with him. I love Brock Bowers. Haven't seen a player like him in God knows how long. Super talented player. I also think some of these other players, people are looking at McConkey as well. People are him 5 touchdowns last year, 14.4 yards per grab. I think this Georgia offense will be solid. I don't know if Stetson Bennett is the right guy. Of course, he gets that kind of legacy thing because he won the title last year. I think he deserves to get another shot, but you said it best, an above-average game manager. And Tom Monken, I don't know if his offense is really the key for the future for Georgia. I think Tom Monken will have to look for a job somewhere else in the future if this Georgia team wants to be competitive nationally year in, year out after Stetson Bennett leaves. This is a good Georgia offense. Nothing going to blow you off the stat sheet because the defense is always going to be the story in Athens. Solid offense, though. Interesting
take there on Todd Monken. We'll see what happens down the line. The offensive line remains largely intact, and that's why the run game might be even better, though. Those 2 big movers on the left side, high-end 5-star in Broderick Jones take over at left. Yeah, a good athlete. This spring, he focused on adding strength, getting better of his technique and some aggressiveness. I think Broderick Jones, he's going to be the next man up there. Amarius Mims, I believe he's the one who flirted with the transfer portal for a little bit. He comes back. Warren McClendon, he's also back as well. Cedric Van Pran, only real penciled-in starter, is back in the summer at least. Tate Rutledge, he was out with an injury. Erickson, a senior, not a lock for that spot. So we'll see what happens. Some shuffling to do on the O-line, but I don't worry one bit. They got some big, tough guys. When in the defense, though, this is the biggest question. Everything is going to come down to what this defense can do. Who's going to replace the beef on the defensive line? A little concerned with this unit is over the last 2 years, they only landed 2 guys ranked inside the top 20 at the position. Of course, now they got 3 in this incoming class ranked inside the top 15. Michael Williams is one of them. Always hesitant on true freshman, a role they will play early on. How fast can they adjust? If I had to pick one incoming freshman at nose that made an impact player, that'd probably be Barry Alexander, 6'3", 325. They might need his size right away. Jalen Carter, though, he's back. Good news for them. I thought he was the best player on the field for them at times last year. Very explosive, very nimble on his feet, powerful guy. He is the top defensive tackle in college football. Moves very well. Zion Logue, Nazir Stackhouse, 2 guys I'm circling. 6'3", 320 for Stackhouse. Logue, 6'5", 295. Warren Brinson is also there. The group is really up for grabs, Nick. I'm not even sure who will start where on this D-line, so that's the biggest group to watch. Top 2 run defense each of the last 3 seasons for Georgia. Nobody can run one bit on these guys. Robert Beal, essentially a veteran at this point, had a tackle for loss in 5 of the last 6 games. He stepped up in Adam Anderson's departure. He was suspended. Should lead the team in sacks this year. Like what Beal's going to do for them. 2 5-stars at middle linebacker. Smail Mondin, his pursuit and athletic ability coverage has really stood out. Excited for his potential. Xavier Sorey, strong but wasn't exactly a downhill tackler in high school. Could potentially be an off-ball linebacker or come off the edge this season. Nolan Smith coming back is going to do wonders for this draft stock. He has a phenomenal first step. He's a natural down here pass rusher. Does most of his work from an athletic standpoint because he doesn't have great power or length. We'll see how much of that is added on this season. Georgia has some short-term question marks on defense here in the front 7. Edge rushing a little iffy. But I think overall these guys are going to be just fine, Nick. But seeing who's going to be the guys to step up, it's kind of a mystery.
Right, the long-term stability for Georgia on defense is certainly there, but I think when you replace the amount of talent they have to replace on the defensive side of the ball this year coming from last year, certainly expect to drop off, but some of the guys they return are solid. Nazir Stackhouse, I loved him, very underrated nose tackle. A lot of people aren't talking about him, and Jalen Carter, he hit it with the defensive tackle there. He is the best defensive tackle in college football right now. Surefire NFL pick for me next year. I love Jalen Carter, love to see what he can do. I also like Nolan Smith coming back. I think he's going to raise his draft stock this year. I think you're going to see another bunch of Georgia Bulldogs drafted early in the NFL draft next year. I love the talent on this defense. I think they're going to slowly develop throughout the year and get better and better. Mondon Jr. as well, super solid at Mac linebacker. I think I like him a whole lot. Robert Beal Jr. is super talented guy. Got better as the season went on last year. I love his tackling ability. This is a solid front 7, a typical Georgia Bulldogs front 7.
Len Schumann and Will Muschamp have some work to do in the secondary. Didn't face many tough passing attacks. Tennessee had a 200-plus yard wide out. Bama twice. The reason why I picked them to win both times because I wasn't a fan of the secondary. And a lot of people were not happy with me saying that, but just I did not see throughout the year them get tested a whole lot, and then I felt when they did, they were going to get torched, and that's kind of what happened. Communication was tough, covering middle of the field was an issue. Outside wasn't that bad. Keely Ringo, one of the top rising corners in college football, sealed the deal in the Natty. Good size at 205, great speed. Had some issues versus the top 2 offenses he faced, but also had bright spots as well, kind of like that player in the Natty. Smith was really good in the slot in 2020 for West Virginia. Tyke Smith, rather, only 2 games last year. His emergence is expected. Kamari Lassiter, 9-1 Green, 2 guys I'm watching. Dan Jackson, that safety, didn't do much in coverage, only 40 tackles. Overall, Georgia secondary, they're getting a lot of guys back. Kind of iffy overall in this group.
I like Ringo. I think he's a solid player. Of course, had that very important play, hit or miss, but that play in the Natty, that's an infamous play for Georgia fans. They're going to love that for forever. I think he's a solid guy. Like him this year. Dan Jackson as well. Like to see him up those tackle numbers a little bit this year. I just didn't really see enough out of him last year. Well-rounded player. I like to see him take a little step forward this year, though.
Chris Smith, he's also going to be expected to be a leader here in the secondary, so I like what him and Ringo are going to bring to the table. Overall, pretty young secondary. William Poole's still there, though, but plenty of young guys that might get an edge. I'm going to go 11-1 for Georgia, but, this team can easily be right back in a spot to defend their national championship. Georgia should be fun to watch this year. Looking at Kentucky, 10-2. I think one of the biggest contenders in the East here is going to be this team, mainly because of this offense. Will Levis, this guy's getting a lot of hype, Nick. Number 1 overall pick type hype, and it makes sense because the raw talent is there. Clayton Kershaw, like velocity, that arm gets him in trouble though. High throws, ball hits the pass catchers too hard. This guy's a cannon of an arm though. He's really good off play action. I think when he starts to develop a little bit more here under Rich Scangrello, the new offensive coordinator coming over from the 49ers, I think that move was kind of an effort of maximizing Levis's potential. I think he's going to have a great year. Chris Rodriguez is back. Physical runner, uses every bit of that 224-pound frame. 27 touchdowns, 27-plus career yards. Averaged 6+ yards per carry past 3 seasons. This guy picks up yards in bunches. Smooth between the tackles as well. Strong lower body. Cavassier Smoke, he's also back. He's probably the top 1-2 punch in college football. Reliable, 1,200-plus yards, 12 scores. He's the quicker of the 2, has better foot speed, like his backfield. They were 5th in FBS last year, 3rd down conversions, 115th on fourths, whatever that's worth. But these guys dominated time of possession. I like the running game. The weapons, though, kind of iffy here. I like the moves they've made to replace the 4 most important starters on this football team altogether. or on offense, rather, especially a receiver. They lose Wandale Robinson, but they add another one in Tavion Robinson. No relation, but he's a consistent performer himself. 1,500 yards in between the 400 to 600 yard mark in all 3 seasons at Virginia Tech. Had a kick return touchdown last year. It's Harris. He's been around a bit, should slot in the lineup. Dane Key, a true freshman, top-ranked player from the state, stays home. He's got good ball skills. Isaiah Cummings moves the tight end, 6'3", 228. Impressive group. Brendan Bates, Keaton Upshaw as well. Both 6'4", 245 or around that. I like the tight ends. I think Tavion Robinson's solid, but other than that, kind of iffy on the pass catching.
Right, I think this is an interesting top pass catching core. I do like what they have here. Super talented. Some of these guys, I think Will Levis is the kind of guy to lead this team. I love Will Levis's potential. The hype about the first overall pick is certainly a bit much for me, but I think he really has it as long as he can turn around this year. I just think the big number that highlights for me last year, 24 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, right? Gets a little happy sometimes, throws a little too hard, finds himself in trouble with 13 picks. Got to cut that down this year, but the 66% completion percentage is solid. And that backfield is absolutely ridiculous. Christopher Rodriguez Jr., ridiculous numbers. Going to put up a lot more this year. I love to see what he can do. I also think what they have in general with Smoke as well, super talented player to bring back. This is a solid running back core. I'm super excited to see what they can do this year.
The line replaces 3 starters. Eric Walford's also gone. He's only there 1 year, but he was big for them. Tashawn Manning, he's a vet from Auburn, 6'4", 344. Eli Cox moves to center, mid-season All-American for in the SEC before he got hurt and missed the last month of the season. I like his potential. Horsey, a redshirt senior at guard. Keontae Goodwin, 6th ranked tackle, top 40 prospect, explosive condition, good finisher. Seems to be a good fit here. I think he's going to hit the field early. Overall, top to bottom, I like this offense. A little iffy on those receivers, but not too worried about it. The running game's too good, as is the quarterback. Looking at the defense, the interior D-line, they were quite beat up last year. Injuries, plenty of size and experience, though. Octavius Oxendine played 6 games. He was a standout for them in the middle, 318-pounder. Emerging leader up front, as is Justin Rogers, 6'6", 336. Josiah Hayes, a notable name. Saunders, he only played 2 games last year. They also added Darian Henry Young from Ohio State. So they got some good depth, some good talent here. Brad White, defensive coordinator, his experience as an outside linebacking coach. It's been a strong shoot for this defense. Guys like Josh Allen, Josh Pascal, Jamar Watson, they've been stars. And J.J. Weaver's up next. 10 tackles for loss, 2 picks last year. Fluid in coverage. Arrives quick to make a tackle when dropping back. He makes tackles on the edge. Big part of their run defense. This guy's versatile. He's going to be a first-team all-conference. Jordan Wright might push for that as well, with 5th-year senior asset coverage for them. Jarquez Jones, 85 tackles. He's very impressive. High upside front 7 altogether, Nick. I love this part of this football team.
I do just want to say quickly, Javon Baker transferred to UCF, by the way.
Okay, I'll cut that out. Thanks.
Yeah, front 7. Yeah, I love this defense. I think they're super talented on the front 7. I think Octavius Oxendine's a guy to look at. 15 tackles last year, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. I like to see him bump those numbers up. J.J. Weaver, really talented player, 10.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. I like to see Weaver burst out this year. I love his potential. I'm super excited for him. I think he's a great fit at linebacker. I like to see him coach him up and be really involved this year. Jarquez Jones as well, super talented. I like his potential as well. Haven't seen it a whole lot. In some regards, he had the sack totals I'd like to see higher, but 82 total tackles last year was solid from Jones. Really solid front 7. This is a good Kentucky Wildcats defense.
Secondary didn't allow much downfield. They're 4th nationally in 30-yard-plus passing plays. I think all of them came against Tennessee, but they ranked dead last in opponent completion rate in the conference. Underneath opponents just took advantage of. 3rd down defense was average. Tackling was a big issue in space and in short areas. Yusuf Corker, a big loss. Valentine comes back. Terrell Achane as well. 2 returners. Both have their issues in man coverage. Secondary, kind of a concerning unit. I think this front 7 is going to be the heavy lifting for them, Nick, and I think 10-2 is a good mark early on in the year. Against Florida is going to be a fun game. We're really going to get to see how good this team is early on.
Right, I agree. This is a really solid Kentucky team. I think the secondary is going to have to really rely on the front 7 to bail them out sometimes, but I think the offense is super solid this year. I think they're going to put up a ton of points. Will Levis is a superstar QB. His running back core is ridiculous. I hope the offensive line can stay together and keep him upright, because if he can do that, he'll be able to reach out to his targets, who may not be the best wide receiving targets, but I think Will Levis just has that raw talent to be able to do what he can with that offense. This team's going to be great this year.
Looking at the South Carolina Gamecocks, we both have them beating Georgia early on in the season, and looking at what they have on offense, they did not have a quarterback last year, still happened to make a bowl game and go above 500. They now have Spencer Rattler. Say what you want about him, and I totally understand. He struggled last year, has had bad attitude. Overall command of the offense last year was not good. Decision making as well. From Heisman favorite to being a transferred a year later is not great. Still completed 75% of his balls, and he's still a high-end talent. He's going to reunite here with Shane. I think he's really going to get a lot out of him, Nick, and I think Spencer Rattler's going to be in for a big season. You can beat anybody when you have a talent like this at quarterback. 8 starters are back overall, and you insert a guy like Rattler. Sky's really the limit here. You look at the top 2 rushers departing. That's obviously big, but they do add Christian Bill Smith from Wake Forest, Marshawn Lloyd's a former high-end recruit. He's a powerful runner that makes plays in the hole. Used in limited action last year after a torn ACL, but obviously he's like a top 40, 50 recruit, so he's going to bring some juice to this backfield. Juju McDonald used a good bit early on in the year, not as much late in the year, but 4.7 yards per carry. He's probably their best pass catching back. Yeah, versatile weapons here at receiver as well. They get Josh Vann back. This is a guy who was quietly a really good player. Good hands, quite physical for being being a bit undersized. Solid separation skills though. Jaheim Bell, the add of Austin Stogner is going to allow him to move the wide receiver. He's a dynamic athlete who's 6'3", 230. Could have a Kyle Pitts type year. That's what I'm expecting out of him. Corey Rucker, very good production over the last 2 years at Arkansas State. In 18 games, he had 75 grabs, 1,200 plus yards. Not bad for a guy who showed up and instantly had an impact for a Group of 5 team. And Antoine Wells comes over from James Madison, 1,200 yards, 5 touchdowns. And Dakarian Joyner, former quarterback, he's got plenty of athleticism. He's going to make an impact. I know I just talked a lot, Nick, but I absolutely love this offense. The offensive line, who's a really shaky unit, can get things going. These guys are going to be good.
I absolutely love this offense, top to bottom. Spencer Rattler, you can say what you want about him, but he was a Heisman favorite preseason last year for a reason. The raw talent is there. I think in a more stable environment with a coach that he's going to get along better with, I think him and Shane Beamer are going to work great together. I think that environment in Oklahoma last year has been unstable at times, kind of caused him to get a little under pressure and make some mistakes. I like Austin Stogner as well coming over. Anton Wells coming from, James Madison, a very strong FCS program, powerhouse, the FCS division. Anton Wells had a good career there. He comes over. Josh Vann as well, super talented wide receiver in the X position. I like to see him be involved. Corey Rucker as well. They have so many different options on offense this year. I love the variety they have. All these guys can do different things. All these guys have different skill sets. They bring them all in. I think they're all going to fit well together. I love the South Carolina offense. I'm super excited to see what they can do, considering this offense wasn't too bad last year, and they didn't even have a quarterback. They cycled through quarterbacks who weren't quarterbacks. It was a whole mess there. Now they have a surefire quarterback, a guy who's has real potential. Sky's the limit. I think this South Carolina offense is going to be fantastic.
104th in scoring offense. Very strange unit last year. Stogner, though, 4 receptions per game in 2020. So that chemistry with Rattler and Beamer is there. Looking at defense, they get back 7 starters on this unit. Went from 36 points per game allowed to 24 this past season in Beamer's first year. It's crazy because they hired an offensive-minded head coach, and the defense progressed probably better than the offense did. Big fan of this D-line. Jordan Birch, 6'6", 268, former 5-star. He's yet to really blossom, and the same goes for Zach Pickens here. The 2 high-end recruits that have yet to really do what they were supposed to do. They really struggled to stop the run last year, and that's why these guys are going to have to step up this fall. Complete demise versus Clemson. They couldn't stop anything that day. 94th with 175 yards per game in college football. They allowed 230-plus yards on the ground 5 times, all versus strong ground and pounds on their schedule. This is an interesting unit, Nick, because these guys are going to have to step up. Damari Stanley, they get him back. Brad Johnson, they lose Damari Stanley, but they get Brad Johnson back. Second on the team with 74 tackles. Sherrod Green's a 6th-year senior. Really has not touched the field much. Mohamed Kaba, I think, will push for that starting job at linebacker. He had 32 tackles himself last year. And then Jordan Strachan, he led the nation in sacks 2 years ago at Georgia State. He's going to be, he was solid last year for them. Now he's going to be leaned on here in his second year. This front seven has a lot of potential, but these guys on the D-line are going to have to step up.
Right, there is potential here, but I'm definitely a little bit shaky about this defensive line. Brad Johnson's a solid guy, like what his numbers have provided so far. 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks last year. I think there is some serious potential here, but I just want to see if these guys can step up early on and be involved. This front seven could definitely be a bit of a problem for South Carolina, but I think it has potential to be a superstar unit.
Speaking of superstar units, the secondary, Jalen Foster's gone. He's the only guy they lose, though. They replace him with a highly active safety in Devon Reed. 72 tackles, 2 picks, 6 pass breakups last year at Central Michigan. Cam Smith might be the nation's top corner. He had 3 picks and the last 11 pass breakups himself. He was a complete force in coverage, nice length and explosiveness. Love Cam Smith. Darius Rush, he had some good plays on the ball last year as well. RJ Roderick's a senior, been around a while. David Spalding made some good plays himself. Could rotate in or step in with injuries. Quality depth with him. Overall, sound secondary. 7th in college football against the pass. Allowed over 250 yards twice. Once with the UGA in a blowout loss, and then Florida in a blowout win. Very interesting team. I think South Carolina could be the biggest sleeper in all of college football. I'm going to go 9-3. I have them losing to Clemson late in the year, and I think Tennessee's going to have their number with some tempo. Very tough schedule overall, Nick, because they also have Texas A&M. They play, both of those teams play together after a bye week. A&M, they played Bama before that bye week, so it's hard to predict that game because energy, mental state, everything's really going to factor into that one, but they do host the Aggies. Very tough schedule, but I'm going to go 9-3.
Right. I think this is a tough schedule, but for me, I have South Carolina winning the East. It's a bit of a shock. It might come as a surprise to some people. I just think they're going to put it all together this year. I think catching Georgia early in the season is an absolute blessing for the South Carolina Gamecocks. They're going to get them early in the season. I think that defense will not be up to speed yet. I think the offense will not as full strength for Georgia. I think South Carolina will catch them out on that day. I think they will lose to Clemson as well. I agree with you. I think Clemson still has their number in that rivalry. So I have South Carolina winning the East by being undefeated in conference play, but having a loss to Clemson, which will be interesting as they set up a matchup in the SEC title game with Alabama. But I do think there's a lot of talent in the East. I love Kentucky. I have them at 9-3. I think they're super talented. They could easily flip a couple wins there. I also think Georgia is going to get a good consolation prize. They'll be 11-1 in my prediction. That could easily see them in the SEC, in the college football playoff as number 2 SEC team, or in a year 6 bowl at least for Georgia. This is a solid East division though, and a couple of teams we didn't even touch on in Florida and Tennessee who have some serious potential as well.
We'll go to our final prediction. Speaking of Tennessee, while we're on this offense has a lot of potential. Cedric Tillman coming back, Hendon Hooker, so good, inefficient last year for them. Solid weapons overall. The offense obviously needs the O-line to step up, but I think they certainly will. The defense, the secondary was just atrocious last year. It's another focal point for them. They got some good players. Byron Young, Tyler Barron up front in the D-line to kind of lead the charge. See what Juwan Mitchell can do at linebacker. And, former Texas transfer. Florida, a team I really like, 6-6. They're going to be probably my biggest sleeper team in the conference because this offensive line is really big. And I think they're really going to dominate the trenches this year, kind of like they did last year. Montreal Johnson comes over, kind of a nice stacked backfield there. Anthony Richardson's obviously high-end talent. Billy Napier brings over Osiris Torrance with him. So the offense is really underrated. We'll see what happens at wide receiver. They got playmakers at all 3 levels of the defense. Gervin Dexter, Ventrell Miller at linebacker. And they also have some great players in the secondary like Trey Dean and Jason Marshall. So I think Florida 6-6, but this is my sleeper team. I think they could really turn the conference on their heels. I think they can win up to 9 or 10 games because they have a tough slate in September. I think they'll go 1-3 in that month, but they could easily be undefeated, Nick. So I think that's a very interesting thing to watch. Missouri, I think it's going to be kind of a rebuild year for them. They got some good assets as well. We'll see what Brady Cook can do. They got some nice players like McGee on the Manuel as well. I think that secondary for Missouri is going to be an impressive unit, but overall, I think one more year away. Vanderbilt, no need to talk about anything there. I think the West Division is really interesting, Nick, because I have 3 teams going 7-5. Ole Miss, very tough schedule. They still can't stop the run. They obviously picked up guys like Kahari Coleman, Troy Brown on the defense, Jalen Robinson at wide receiver, Jackson Dart, Zach Evans. I mean, they are loading up in the portal. Some really good players. They also picked up an offensive lineman from Western Kentucky. So Ole Miss 7-5 for me, but that's kind of like Florida, a team that could win a lot more games than people think. Auburn, nice backfield. Tank Bigsby, Jarquez Hunter, 3 quarterbacks battling for the job, so we'll see what happens there. None of them really stand out. I think Robbie Ashford will get the nod there. Owen Papoy, Derek Hall. This is a really loaded defense that people aren't really talking about. The secondary, I think they're going to take a step back. We'll see if Naheem Pritchard can be that breakout for them at corner. Nice pass rushing unit. Overall, good front 7 for Auburn. A team that can really catch you off guard on any given Sunday and cap things off Arkansas. People are not going to be happy with them getting this prediction, but I just think overall the lack of pass rush is really going to hurt their secondary, who loses some good players. They were getting burned last year deep downfield. Jalen Catalon, though, him coming back, that's going to be big. The addition of Drew Sanders at linebacker, I like that. You got 3 linebackers last year that 100-plus tackles. Bumper Pool is also one of those guys coming back, so I think linebackers are pretty good. But the D-line's a big concern for me. The pass rush, the secondary, I wasn't really thrilled with last year, even though they do have guys like Latavius Brin coming over. So Arkansas 6-6 for me. And Mississippi State, I hate to do that for them too because they return more starters than anyone in this conference. But I just think that they're going to play better football teams. I like the air raid. I think they're interesting. Will Rogers is really good last year. They have a really good front 7 that stops the run very well. Nathaniel Watson, Jet Johnson, 2 notable linebackers there. I'm done talking, Nick. I absolutely love this conference. The West is stacked. The East has some good players as well. This is probably going to be the best year ever for the SEC. I don't know if that's a stretch or not, but I really love what I'm seeing in this conference.
Right, it would be criminal if I didn't touch on Hendon Hooker in Tennessee. I think Hendon Hooker is such a star quarterback. I think Tennessee's finally got their star quarterback. Him and Josh Heupel together, absolutely dynamite. I love this duo. 31 touchdowns, 3 interceptions last year for Hooker. I expect him to continue to be an all-star this year. He should break 3,000 passing yards this year. And in addition to that, he's 600 yards on the ground last year. He can easily add some more to that as well. Hooker in this Tennessee offense is going to be ridiculous this year. Tennessee, definitely an exciting team to watch in the East. Florida, Billy Napier heading in the right direction. I love what the Gators are building. Tough draw this year, getting Utah at home. That's a tough matchup. Tough schedule top to bottom, so 6-6 for me as well. But I think this is a solid Florida team that will be contending back in the East very shortly. Missouri as well. I think it's a rebuilding year, but they are recruiting very well in state. Getting a 5-star recruit at wide receiver is a ridiculous pull for that team in Columbia, Missouri. I love what the potential they have. Eli Drinkwitz is a solid coach. I think they're in the right direction. Missouri, Vanderbilt, not going to really touch on them. Not too worried about them. They might win a game this year. We'll see how that goes for them. As for the West, I think Arkansas, tough draw on the schedule, very tough schedule, but I do like what they have on defense. Bumper Pool, one of my favorite players, the SEC, I love potentially has great leadership in the locker room. I think Auburn as well. I like the way that they're kind of building some shaky stuff in the offseason, but they seem to put it all together. I think that they have a solid roster. Tanks Bigsby is a solid back. I love what he can do on the ground. Interesting that QB battle, though. TJ Finley is my starter currently with the off-field issues and other things there. he could find himself out of a job. Zach Calzada, of course, beat Alabama last year at Texas A&M. Ole Miss as well. I think they reloaded perfectly. I like Lane Kiffin, sort of what he's doing in Oxford. I think this Ole Miss team can certainly contend in the West in a few years, but right now I think it's just a little too soon. Mississippi State, I do hate to put them at 6-6, like you said, because they return so much talent and their quarterback's not too bad as well. Mike Leach, I love that air raid offense, but I think Mississippi State just a little bit off the pace in the SEC and find themselves bottom of the West. It's poor to put them there, but it's gonna be a tough season for Mississippi State. Top to bottom though, SEC is really good this year. I love the talent these rosters have.
Mississippi State, they can compete though. They've proven that. Not against Alabama, of course, but the other teams they've really proven they can compete against. Look at our conference title predictions and some awards. We'll just do this quickly because it's pretty much a straight fire here. We both have Alabama as conference champions. South Carolina for Nick in the East. Georgia for me, even though I do have South Carolina beating Georgia. Both have Bryce Young being the reigning Offensive Player of the Year. Will Anderson as well on the defensive side. Not much to discuss on the next two awards. South Carolina, I think they're going to get a good season going there. And I have 3-0 for South Carolina because I think Jaheim Bell is really going to have a Kyle Pitts type like season. You have Montrell Johnson as your breakout star. It's hard to pick one in this conference, but why do you like him so much? The reigning freshman player of the year in the Sun Belt.
Right, you touched on it when you talked about Florida. I think that's a perfect fit for him, transferring over. Had a great year in the Sun Belt at Louisiana. I think he's a super solid back. I love his speed. I love his athleticism. I think he fits in perfectly. He transfers over here. Florida was the perfect destination for him. He joins up with Billy Napier again. I love Johnson. I think he's going to break out this year and absolutely dominate. Don't be surprised early on in the season he starts putting up ridiculous numbers. People start to see his name, start calling out his name a little bit more. I love Montrell Johnson. I think it's a perfect fit at Florida.
Sleeper team, it's hard to pick in this conference. I think they're still loaded. Pick anyone other than Bama, A&M, or Georgia. And I'm going to go with LSU just because I love that defense's potential. I think they could really figure things out on offense as well. We're going to go with Kentucky, and I totally understand why. Great front seven, great offense, nice offensive line, great quarterback in the running game. So makes a lot of sense there. Nick, this was a blast. Took a while, but the SEC, this is the best conference for a reason. We like to focus on that tremendously. I appreciate you joining me.
It's the conference folks want to watch on Saturday. They tune in. That CBS game of the week. This is an exciting conference. I'm really excited to see what they can do this year. Alabama should be good. Georgia should be good. Texas A&M should be good. Excited conference top to bottom. Really excited to get back to Saturday kickoff at 3 p.m. and see what they can do.
That's me for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.